My name is Mrs. Epperson, and I'm going to be reading you a story. Today's story is Geronimo Stilton, Secret Agent. It's worth 1 point on AR, so if your school does AR, you can take the quiz after and get your points. A suspicious-looking rodent. That morning was just like any other morning. I woke up and smelled the cheese. Hot cheddar, that is. I like to make a whole pot every day. Then I stuffed my paws into my comfy cat fur slippers. I shuffled to the window to check the weather. The forecast was for rain, but when I looked outside, I just saw lots of clouds. Clouds and a very suspicious-looking rodent with dark sunglasses across the street. How odd! I took a shower and gobbled down my breakfast. Melted cheddar toast. Yum! Then I headed for the subway. I was humming one of my favorite love songs, Beady-Eyed Beauty, when I saw him again, that same suspicious-looking rodent with the sunglasses was walking right behind me. How strange. A few minutes later, I arrived at my stop. I scampered out the door. Guess who was right on my tail? You got it, Mr. Dark Sunglasses. How odd! At last I reached my office at 17 Swiss Cheese Place. I couldn't believe it. Mr. Sunglasses had beaten me there. I was starting to get a little creeped out. A chill ran down my fur. What did he want from me? Why was he following me? Part of me was afraid to find out. What if he mistook me for an escaped con rat? What if I reminded him of someone he didn't like? What if he hated my tie? I decided there was only one thing left to do. I raced up the stairs to my office and slammed the door. Then I buried my snout in work. But when I looked out the window at lunchtime, guess who I saw? Yep, it was that mouse again. He was there when I left the office. He was there when I reached my house. He was there after I scarfed down a supersized 3-cheese pizza for dinner. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I just had to find out who that mouse was. With a squeak, I yanked open the door to my house. Then I stuck out my snout and yelled, "Who are you and what do you want from me? Who are you? Don't you recognize me?" Even though I was screaming at the top of my lungs, the rodent barely flinched. Instead, he calmly took off his sunglasses and smiled. Or was it a smirk? How strange. The rodent looked so familiar. Was it the trench coat? Was it the paws in the pockets? Was it the perfectly groomed fur? I touched a paw to my own head. My fur was getting a little long. I made a mental note to make an appointment at Clip Rat's Salon and Day Spa. I was thinking about fur cuts when the rodent suddenly tapped me on the forehead. He stared into my eyes. Cheese niblets! Was he trying to hypnotize me? I gulped. I read about bad mice like this. First, they put you under a spell. Then they break into your mouse hole and steal your money. A rodent's beady eyes seemed to drill right into me. I was so nervous I could barely see straight. I tried practicing the deep breathing techniques I had learned in Penny Pretzel's paw yoga class. They didn't work. I guess I wasn't paying enough attention in class. Just then, the rodent leaned in closer. I broke out in a cold sweat. "This is it," I mumbled to myself. "Goodbye, Mouse World." But instead of hypnotizing me, the rodent sniggered. "Don't you recognize me, Geronimo?" he said. "My name is... It's Cornelius von Kickpaw." I could hardly believe my eyes. The last time I had seen Cornelius, I was still learning how to do math and tie my shoes. We were friends in elementary school. A mouse wearing a trench coat. In school, Cornelius sat in the desk behind me. He always wore a trench coat, no matter what the weather was like, and he always wore dark sunglasses, even when it wasn't sunny. Yes, he was an odd sort of mouse, but we were good friends anyway. One time Wendell Wild Whiskers and his gang stuffed me into a gym locker. Cornelius came to my rescue. He ripped open the locker and made Wendell apologize. After that, the bullies never picked on me again. I always felt safe when Cornelius was around. I smiled thinking about those days. Even though we hadn't squeaked in years, Cornelius would always be a great friend. Do you have any friends like Cornelius? If you do, you are very lucky. My dear Aunt Sweetfur likes to say, "Whoever finds a friend finds a treasure." I invited Cornelius into my house. Then I showed him around. It didn't take very long. My mouse hole isn't very big. I'm super proud of it. I especially love my kitchen with my mega fridge. While we were in the kitchen, I whipped up some tasty grilled cheese sandwiches. Cornelius munched them down in 2 seconds flat. Did I mention he's a big mouse? Finally, we sat down in the living room to chat. We had so much catching up to do. We squeaked about old times, old friends, and my job at the Rodents Gazette. "So what kind of work do you do, Cornelius?" I asked. My friend held up his paw. "It's top secret," he whispered. "You have to promise you won't tell anyone." I gasped. Why was my friend being so mysterious? Why? Was he a professional burglar? Was he in the Mouse Protection Program? "I promise," I agreed, eyes wide. Cornelius put his paw around my shoulder. Then he leaned in close and whispered, "My code name is OK. I'm a secret agent." The Von Kickpaw Estate. I was convinced Cornelius was pulling my paw. I mean, I'd seen secret agents before in the movies, but not in New Mouse City. "I'm not acting, Geronimo," my friend insisted. He drove me to his mansion in the country. On the way there, Cornelius explained that he was involved in secret missions for the government of Mouse Island. I felt like I was in a dream. At last we reached the mansion. What a sight! I knew my friend was rich, but this place was more spectacular than Elvis Mountsley's estate. The property was surrounded by a... Ooh, look at that picture of the property. My goodness, the property was surrounded... Oh, what's this? We have a map of the property. I see number 1 there is a mansion. Number 2 is a greenhouse for rare plants. Number 3 is a tennis court. Number 4 is a helicopter pad. Number 5 is the garage. Number 6, a swimming pool. Number 7, stable and paddock for horses. Number 8, a private beach and yacht. And number 9, a golf course. The property was surrounded by a gleaming wrought iron gate with the letters VK inscribed at the entrance. The driveway wound its way past a perfectly manicured lawn. I spotted a greenhouse, tennis courts, and a stable for horses. And inside of the mansion was almost as amazing as the outside. The entryway was made of white marble. 2 magnificent gold and diamond-studded chandeliers glimmered over our heads. And there was even a fountain shaped like a gigantic wedge of cheese in the hallway. Cornelius ushered me into the living room. It was filled with priceless antiques. Paintings by famous artists decorated the walls. I stared at a painting of a gorgeous rodent hanging above the fireplace. Wow, what a stunning mouse! I couldn't take my eyes off her. "That's my sister Veronica," said Cornelius. "She's a secret agent, too. Her code name is OOV. Just then, I sensed something behind me. When I turned around, my jaw dropped. It was her! It was OOV. My heart began racing like a car at the Indy Mouse 500. Did I mention? I get a little nervous around beautiful rodents. Is that you on the wall? In the frame? I mean, in the painting? I babbled. The rodent flashed me a tiny smile. Or was it a smirk? Then she vanished. A delicate perfume lingered in the room. Wow, what a stunning mouse. I wondered if I could ask her out for a cup of hot cheddar sometime. Too bad she disappeared so quickly. I was still dreaming about Double O.V. when Cornelius led me into the library. We sat down on two comfy leather paw chairs. Without a word, Cornelius patted the arm of his chair. Seconds later, the rug slid aside. We were sitting on top of a trap door. Before I could let out a squeak, I found myself zipping down a steep, dark tunnel. Tell me when it's over, I cried. Ooh, look, a map to the tunnel. They spinned around and they came out in the bottom. Number 1's the trap door. Number 2's the tunnel. Number 3 is the secret lab. Number 4 is a computer area. Number 5 is a mega globe. Number 6, instruments for scientific analysis. Number 7, control stations for wind tunnels. Number 8 is a garage for 00 car and 00 motorbike, 00 plane, and other vehicles. A lift for the 00 vehicles. Secret exit for the 00 vehicles. And a secret dock for the 00 boats. I'm a secret agent. Minutes later, we landed in an elegant living room. We were still seated in our paw chairs, but now we were underground in a very mysterious place. I pinched myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Ouch! That hurt. I may not be a tough mouse, but I do have one painful pinch. After I recovered, Cornelius, a.k.a. 00K, showed me all the agent gear. This included a bow tie that turned into a rope, a ring filled with sneezing powder, and anti-gravity shoes. I was impressed and a little bit scared. Just then, Cornelius looked at me with a piercing... Ooh, what's this? Cornelius von Kickpaw, codename 00K, secret agent. Who is he? Geronimo's friend from elementary school. Peculiarities, always wears a trench coat and sunglasses even at night. 00V is Veronica von Kickpaw. 00V, secret agent. Cornelius' sister. Her peculiarities are she always wears a mysterious, delicate, and sophisticated perfume that makes her immediately identifiable and fascinating. Let me go back to finish that sentence here. Cornelius looked at me with a piercing stare. I gulped. Had I done something wrong already? Let me tell me why you're here, Cornelius began. He opened a little black case and took out a stack of newspapers. To my surprise, the articles were all about me. There was even a color photo of me in front of the Rodents Gazette. I have to admit, it wasn't a very good one. Are my ears really that big? I muttered. Cornelius shook his head. Forget about your ears, Geronimo. You have more important things to worry about, he advised. By reading the newspaper, anybody can figure out where you live, where you work, where you go on vacation, who your friends are. Your life's one open book. This is dangerous, Geronimo, he continued. If an evil rodent wanted to hurt you or play a mean trick on you, they would have no problem. It would be like taking cheese from a young mouselet. You need someone to protect you, and I'm here to say I'm your mouse. I felt flattered. I mean, it's not often that you have a secret agent friend who wants to be your furry bodyguard. Still, I politely declined. Cornelius tried to make a list of all the things that could get me in trouble, and when it was time to leave, Cornelius made me promise I would call him if I ever got into trouble. I grinned. Aunt Sweetfur sure was right. Cornelia, a friend is a true treasure. A flower pot could fall on your head, Or you could get lost in a bad section of the city at night. Or you could be attacked by a hungry cat. Or you could get run over by a motorcycle. Or you could be threatened by a rival publisher. Or you could get run over by a car. Or you could get kidnapped by a really evil rodent. Or you could be harassed by an annoying author. Or you could fall into a manhole. Or you could be chased by a crowd of admirers. What a great day. The next morning, I woke up feeling extra happy. I had good friends, a good family, and a great life. I gobbled down my breakfast and practically skipped out my door. A strong wind was blowing, but I wasn't going to let that get me down. I smiled, thinking about how I used to love flying kites when I was a tiny mouselet. The sun was shining, so I decided to walk to work. What a great day. While I was walking, I thought about my friend Cornelius. He really didn't need to worry about me. Today I was feeling more than double okay. The wind was blowing hard when I reached my office. I shut the door behind me and raced upstairs. Geronimo, don't forget that today is an important meeting with the president of the New Mouse City Historical Society and your grandfather, Priscilla Pretty Whiskers reminded me. Do you know Priscilla? She's one of the editors at the Rodent Gazette. Now, I looked at her and frowned. Meeting? I mumbled. What meeting? Priscilla reminded me that the head of the Historical Society was coming to check out the Rodent Gazette. It seemed they were doing research on the oldest buildings in the city. The Gazette was on the list. Rats! How could I forget such an important meeting? I threw open the door to the office. I had to get my notes ready for the meeting. If I wasn't prepared, Grandfather would have my tail. I was so worried about Grandfather that at first I didn't notice anything different. Then it hit me. A cold gust of wind sent my whiskers whirling. Cheese niblets! The night before I had accidentally left my window open. I watched in horror as the fierce wind picked up a large envelope with a red seal. The gust lifted the envelope off my desk and blew it straight out the window. With a squeak, I tried to catch it, but it was too late. My snout smacked down hard on my desk. Youch! I wondered if I'd ever be able to sniff again. Very important envelope put on Geronimo's desk by Priscilla. As I rubbed my nose, I told myself not to panic. After all, as the publisher of a newspaper, I was always getting tons of nutty mail. That envelope was probably some wacky mouse wanting me to do a story on alien cats or something. Flying, 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 away that letter goes. I forgot to close the window, and there was a draft. A gust of wind blew the envelope off my desk. I dove to catch it, but smacked my nose instead. I think I lost it. At that moment, the door of my office burst open. Grandson! The meeting has already started. What are you doing in here? A gruff mouse shrieked. I gulped. It was my highly stressed, highly irritable, highly demanding grandfather, William Shortpaws. A shiver ran down my fur. The meeting had started. You're late, 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 with a capital L, he screamed. The president of the New Mouse City Historical Society and the committee members are waiting for us. Let's move it. And grandson, try not to embarrass me. Got it? We sat at our usual seats in the conference room. Richard F. Ramblesnout, the head of the Historical Society, cleared his throat. Welcome, gentle mice. Let's get started. I'll be brief, he began. I chewed my whiskers. Whenever anyone starts with, I'll be brief, they usually end up squeaking on forever. In fact, that's exactly what happened. After a little while, I began to doze off. I was awakened by a piercing shout. Grandson! Yelled my grandfather. Are you sleeping? My fur turned red with embarrassment. Did you hear what Mr. Ramblesnout said? He shrieked. There's an incredibly rare and valuable document on your desk. It's in a large envelope with a gold seal on it. Go get it now. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. How could this be happening? That envelope with the red seal on it was not junk mail. It was valuable, very valuable. Well, unfortunately, I think I lost it, I whispered softly. Excuse me. Grandfather threw a fit. What? Get that wax out of your ears and listen up. I want that document here and on this table by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Got it, he shouted. Everyone turned to look at me. I felt faint. I saw their eyes, disbelief, shock, astonishment, bewilderment, bafflement, annoyance, indignation, anger, sympathy, and pity. What could I do? What could I say? I had to find that envelope. I just had to. I'll do my best, I coughed. Then I slunk out of the room with my tail between my legs. A volcano ready to explode. I got back to my office and collapsed behind my desk. Oh, how did I get myself into such a mess? I stared out the window. I could hear the wind roaring. It looked like the storm was brewing. A few minutes later, Grandfather William scampered into my office. He didn't slam the door. Odd. He didn't yell. Even more odd. I braced myself. Talk about a storm brewing. I knew Grandfather William too well. When he was angry, he was like a volcano ready to explode, like a water balloon ready to pop, like a pan of cheese popcorn ready to burst. Cheese popcorn. My stomach began to growl. I was hungry for my mid-morning cheddar muffin, but it would have to wait. Geronimo, do you have any idea what's inside that envelope? He began. I started to answer, but he interrupted me. It's the deed to this land, he thundered. It's the only proof we have that we own the property. If some rotten mouse gets his or her paws on that envelope, we'll lose the Rodent's Gazette. I closed my eyes. Oh, how did I get myself into such a mess? I'm not sure I want to know. How hard can it be? After Grandfather stormed out of my office, I had a terrible nightmare. Well, it wasn't actually a nightmare, since it was only 11:30 in the morning. But you get the idea. A horrifying picture of Sally Ratmousin flashed before my eyes. She was waving an envelope with a red seal, screaming, "The Rodent's Gazette is mine, mine, mine! The Rodent's Gazette is mine, mine, mine!" I felt awful, like I had just lost everything. The newspaper, my job, my appetite. Well, maybe not that last one. After all, it was nearly lunchtime. Just then I noticed a photo of me on my desk. It was a shot of me climbing Mount Everest. Suddenly I felt a surge of energy. If I could climb a mountain as high as Mount Everest, how hard could it be to find a silly old envelope? By now it was noon. I needed to find the envelope by 9 a.m. the next morning. That meant I still had 21 hours. I grabbed a pen and paper. I sat down to make a list. I love making lists. They help me to stay organized. I wrote down all the things I needed to do. 1, be calm. 2, ask friends for help. 3, call the weather mouse to find out the speed and direction of the wind. 4, trace a possible route on the map of New Mouse City that the envelope might have taken. 5, get going. Important. Ready to take a supply of cheesy chews. I began to do all the things written on my list. 1, be calm. Then I called my sister Thea. The answering machine picked up. I'm not at home. Leave a message. Beep. I called my cousin Trap. His answering machine picked up too. I'm not home, or if I am, I'm busy eating. Cooking. Eating and cooking. Leave a message. Beep. I thought about calling my friend Petunia Pretty Paws. She's so smart and beautiful, but I was too embarrassed. I didn't want Petunia to think I was a complete furbrain for losing such an important document. Instead, I tried my friend Bert Burley Rat. We had met at a survival camp in the jungle. I got his answering machine. I'm not in, but you might be able to find me in the Amazon. That is, if you don't mind a few hungry pythons and some killer quicksand. Beep! Why, oh why? Why was no one home when you needed them? For a nanosecond, I thought of double OK. But then, like Petunia, I was too embarrassed. Besides, I had already told Cornelius I didn't need his help. All right, don't panic, I said aloud, trying to give myself a pep talk. This means you will have no help. You will be all alone, and you'll have to do everything by yourself. I put my head in my paws, and I began sobbing uncontrollably. Guess my pep talk needed work. Lots of work. I began to do the things written on my list. 1. Be calm. Why, oh, why was no one home when you needed them? You'll be all alone, and you'll need to do everything by yourself. I'm your biggest fan. After I stopped crying, I wrung out my whiskers. Then I looked at my list again. I skipped over number 1, be calm, skipped number 2, ask friends for help, and went straight to numbers 3 and 4. First, I found a map of New Mouse City, spread it out across my desk. Next, I dialed the number for the local weather center. Good morning. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton. I need some information on the speed and direction of the wind in New Mouse City from around 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I began. I was greeted with an excited squeak. Oh, Mr. Stilton, what an honor! I am your biggest friend. I read all your books, a female rodent gushed. Why do you need to know about the wind? Are you writing about it? Are you coming down to the weather center? Oh, I'm so excited. I'd love to meet you. Maybe we can chat or do lunch. Or how about a movie? I blushed. Sometimes I'm really shy around my female fans. Well, I don't have time to come there today, I explained. I really just need to know the direction of the wind. Oh, of course, the mouse agreed. Then she told me the awful news. It seemed the wind had done something really strange this morning. It had changed direction every 15 minutes. She fired off a list of speeds and times. By the time I got off the phone, my left ear was on fire. My paw was cramped, and I'd made a date to go see The Return of Catzilla. Oh, why could I never say no to my female fans? Here's the route the envelope took. Oh my goodness, it went down around the houses and around the businesses and down by the water and around some more. And it looks like it landed by the lighthouse here. How embarrassing. Not a very athletic mouse, still there was no time to rest. I had to find that envelope. I scoured every fishing boat. I patted down every fishing net. I even peered in the open mouths of 100 slimy tuna fish. What a stench! I could barely breathe, but I had to keep going. Then I spotted a row of garbage cans. Each one was filled with rotting, smelly fish bones. What could I do? With a groan, I stuck my snout inside the first garbage can. I didn't notice a woman staring at me. Aren't you Geronimo Stilton? She said, wrinkling her nose. It was Petunia Prettypaw's aunt. How embarrassing! A few minutes later, a very old mouse with a cane strolled by. Aren't you Geronimo Stilton? He said, shaking his head. It was my grandfather's old friend, Snifty. How embarrassing! I stuck my snout deeper into the next garbage can, trying to hide, but a pretty young rodent spotted me. Aren't you Geronimo Stilton? She said, looking shocked. It was Benjamin's schoolteacher. How embarrassing! I made a fool of myself, and I hadn't even found the envelope. 2 minutes later, a seagull swooped down and pooped right on my head. What next? On top of a stinky mountain. I sat on the sidewalk, totally depressed. Just then I heard a loud grumbling. My fur stood on end. Was it a killer whale? Was it a ferocious sea monster? Was it how all the world would end? Was this how it would all end? Headlines flashed through my brain. Crazed whale grabs Stilton by the tail. Stilton sucked up by sea creature. Then I realized the grumbling was coming from my tummy. I was starved. Too bad I had forgotten the most important thing on my list, a supply of cheesy chews. I stared at the smelly garbage cans, feeling even more depressed, and that's when it hit me. No, not more seagull poop. That is, it was an idea. Where could I find all the garbage in New Mouse City? At the town dump, of course. If the envelope had fallen on the ground, it would surely have been swept up. Then it would go straight to the dump. Before throwing anything away, do you ever ask yourself if somebody else could use it? Or if it could be recycled, that is, used again? Certain types of garbage, such as paper, plastic, glass, and aluminum, are recyclable and can be used to produce new things. By recycling, we save natural resources and the energy that is needed to make new products. Separating the recyclables, if we learn to divide garbage according to its composition and place it in assigned containers, the paper, plastic, glass, and aluminum cans can be recycled. Where does garbage end up? Recycling plants. There are recycling centers that collect various types of garbage, such as paper, glass, plastic, and aluminum, rework it, and then reuse it. Garbage dumps. All garbage that is not recyclable ends up in dumps. Incinerators. There are plants where garbage is burned to eliminate it. As the refuse is burned, a tremendous amount of heat is released, which can then be transferred into energy. What can you do? Squash plastic bottles and place them in the appropriate containers. Pick up all papers, newspapers, magazines, and cardboard, tie them in bundles, and recycle them. Use your imagination to reuse things you thought you no longer needed. For example, you can change an empty ice cream plastic container into a delightful boat. Try to figure out how. Before buying a new thing, stop and think. Do I really need it? Right at that moment, a garbage truck rumbled by. I took off like lightning, like a rocket, like the world's fastest marathon mouse. Well, okay, maybe I wasn't that fast. In fact, I was pretty slow. But don't tell anyone. Before long, I reached the garbage dump. What a sight! The garbage was piled up a mile high, and it smelled worse than my cousin Rancid Rat's stinky breath. I climbed on top of the huge pile and rested. Garbage, more garbage, and even more garbage. Just then a truck arrived, and before I could squeak, it happened. A whole mound of new garbage came pouring out of the truck. It all crashed down right on top of me. I began rolling down the hill like an out-of-control furball. Oh, what a mess I was in this time. And I mean mess. I tried to grab hold of something, but all I got was a rotten banana peel. Help! I screeched. I'm being buried alive in junk. I moved my arms to the garbage as if I were swimming to keep myself from being buried alive. Suddenly I felt two strong paws pulling me out of the garbage heap. I'm here to help, a deep voice said. At the same time, I smelled a delicate perfume. It seemed so familiar. Thanks, I mumbled before I passed out. When I came to, I was still at the town dump, but I wasn't rolling anymore. I looked around. I was alone. Who had saved me? And why did he disappear? It was a real mystery. I was still thinking about my mysterious rescuer when I noticed the wind had picked up. Thousands of pieces of paper began swirling around me. At that moment, I spotted an envelope drifting right above my head. Could it be? It was! It was the envelope with the red seal, the one I'd been searching for. But just as I reached to grab it, it disappeared down a mouse hole cover. Down, down, down into the sea of foul slime. What could I do? I had to get that envelope. With a groan, I lifted up the grate and lowered myself into the mouse hole. It was dark, so very dark. My teeth began to chatter. Did I mention I'm afraid of the dark and tight spaces and the ding of the toaster oven? Oh, but that's another story for another time. I was wishing I had worn the glow-in-the-dark tie my cousin Trap had given me so I could see a little better. Just then, I slipped. Down, down, down I tumbled, snout first, into the darkness. After what seemed like a million years, I landed with a sickening splash. I found myself floating in a sea of slimy green liquid. The smell was worse than the town dump. Welcome to the sewers of Mouse City. I dragged myself out of the water and looked around. No sign of the envelope with the red seal. But I did see something shiny and yellow. I blinked. A pair of glittering eyes stared at me through the darkness. My whiskers began to tremble. Who in their right mind would live down here in the sewer? Just then, the creature cackled softly. Ha ha ha! Was it laughing at me? Was it going to pounce on me? Was this how it would all end? I braced myself for an attack. But nothing happened. Instead, the yellow eyes took off into the darkness. At first, I was glad to see them go. Then I was even more scared. Without those eyes, the sewer was darker than Theater 4 at the Cheddarville Tenplex. There was only one thing left to do: follow those eyes. I chased them the entire night. I was exhausted. Finally, they stopped, turned around, and started chasing me. Rancid rat hairs! Now what was I supposed to do? Ha ha ha! The creature cackled. This was it. I was a goner. Oh, why hadn't I let my friend Cornelius help me? He was right. I was no good at protecting myself. I was always getting myself into these jams. I mean, the last time I tried to bake cookies, I got my tail stuck in the oven. My burning fur set off the smoke alarm. I was so embarrassed when the fire mouse showed up on my doorstep. Help! Help! Somebody help me! I squeaked at the top of my lungs. Meanwhile, the yellow eyes zoomed closer. Suddenly, I realized who they belonged to. An enormous crocodile. And even worse, it was holding the envelope with the red seal in its ferocious jaws. Cheese niblets! I closed my eyes and wished for a miracle. I could hear the crocodile gnashing its teeth. Its breath smelled like rotten goat cheese. Hadn't this guy heard about the dangers of tooth decay? I was still thinking about teeth when somebody grabbed me by the shoulders. I'm here to help, a familiar voice said. Again, I smelled the delicate perfume. I opened my eyes, but it was too dark. I could only see the eyes of the crocodile. They were staring right at me. The croc looked hungry, very hungry. Goodbye, Mouse World, I sobbed, and then I fainted. When I came to, I was back on the street. It was already dawn. I looked around me, but didn't see anyone. Who had saved me? Why did he disappear? It was a real mystery. Up, into Sally Rasmussen's office. I sat on the curb, feeling totally confused. What had just happened to me? How did I get out of the sewer? Who was my mysterious rescuer? But above all, what happened to the envelope with the red seal that was between the crocodile's teeth? Do you know what happened next? A miracle! A real miracle! I looked up, and there it was, the envelope. The wind had picked it up and carried it high above my head. It flew higher and higher. An instant later, it slipped into an open window. Double-twisted rat tails. That window belonged to my biggest enemy, Sally Rasmussen. Do you know Sally? She's one of the owners of the Daily Rat. Her dream is to put the Rodents Gazette out of business. Now, what was I supposed to do? Sally would never let me into her office. Firstly, I was covered with stinky, smelly slime from the sewer. And secondly, Sally hated me. I glanced at my watch. It was 8:30. Yikes, only 30 minutes left. That's it, I decided. I had no choice. I'm going in. I slunk up the steps of the Daily Rat and squeezed through the doors. I did it! I was in! I was so proud of myself, I barely noticed where I was going. Before I knew it, I was standing right outside Sally's office. I peeked inside. Sally was seated behind her crystal desk. The desk was empty except for one thing. I gulped. It was the envelope with the red seal. I was just about to dash in and grab it when Sally spotted me, or should I say, smelled me. "Geronimo Stilton!" she screeched. "What are you doing here in my office? You smell worse than the inside of the Cheddartown stables." Just then she realized I was staring at the envelope. I see I have something you want," she cackled. She picked up the envelope and fanned her snout. "I don't know what it is, but it's mine, mine, mine." I groaned. I should have known Sally would never give up without a fight. I tried every trick in the book. "Fire! Aliens! Run for your life!" I squeaked, but Sally didn't budge. Then I had an idea. "Sally, I hate to alarm you," I whispered, "but you broke a paw nail." That did it. Sally flew into a frenzy. Where? She shrieked. In a flash, I grabbed the envelope. I raced for the door, but I wasn't fast enough. Sally grabbed me by the tail. The envelope flew out of my paws. I watched in horror as it drifted out the window. I felt my heart sink. This was it. I'd never find that envelope again. I was a dead rat. And maybe sooner than I thought. Sally's muscular bodyguard was staring at me like I was piping hot 3-cheese pizza. "Muscle Rat, please take Mr. Stilton away and make sure you teach him a lesson he'll never forget," she ordered with an evil smirk. Muscle Rat lifted me into the air with one paw. Holy cheese! The rodent was strong. I mean, I'm not the heaviest mouse in the world, but I'm no lightweight. Plus, I have to admit, lately, I've been cheating on my diet. Muscle Rat carried me down the hall. Then he locked me inside the broom closet. "I heard you like dark places," he snickered. I felt dizzy. My paws started to sweat. My heart started to pound. I began to sob uncontrollably. "Somebody help me!" I wailed. Suddenly, I heard a click, and the door opened. I felt someone grab my shoulder. A deep voice said, "I'm here to help." That same delicate perfume I had smelled before filled my nose. I tried to say thanks, but I couldn't. I had fainted. The case of the mysterious rescuer. When I came to, I found myself outside. I was sitting on the sidewalk in front of the Daily Rat. It was 8:45. I looked around me, but I didn't see anyone. Who had saved me? Why did he disappear? I felt like I was on one of those true life mystery shows on TV. The case of the mysterious rescuer. Too bad everything wasn't going to work out perfectly in the end. I still hadn't found the envelope with the red seal. I stared at the ground, feeling glum. My grandfather would never let me live this one down. I'd be humiliated in front of all my coworkers. I'd have to leave the Gazette. I'd have no money, no job. I'd wander the streets looking for food. Well, at least I knew how to get to the town dump. Maybe I could find some scraps of moldy cheese. A tear slid down my fur, then another and another. Soon I was bawling my eyes out. Just then I felt someone touch my shoulder. At the same time, I smelled the perfume again. "I'm here to help," a deep voice said, and then it hit me. No, not more garbage. Not more seagull poop. It hit me who the voice belonged to. I jumped off the curb and whirled around. I was right! The voice belonged to my old friend Cornelius. Yep, I was snout to snout with double OK and the fascinating double OV. How can we help you? They asked. I let out a sigh. I lost an envelope. A very important envelope, I moaned. And now my grandfather's going to kill me. For some reason, Cornelius, a.k.a. Double OK, and his sister Veronica, a.k.a. Double OV, looked at each other and smiled. A large envelope? Said Double OK. With a red seal? Said Double OV. My jaw hit the ground. These secret agents were unbelievable. I had no idea they were mind readers. I nodded, awestruck. Then Cornelius handed me something. My eyes nearly popped out of my fur. It was the envelope! But how? When? What? I sputtered. Cornelius just grinned. We secret agents work in mysterious ways, he said. His sister Double OV nodded. I wondered if they could read my mind now. I was so happy I felt like I had just won a lifetime supply of Cheesy Chews. Countdown. 5, 4, 3. Suddenly I remembered the time. I glanced at my paw watch. Holy cheddar chunks! It was 8:55 a.m. I only had 5 minutes to get the envelope to my grandfather. I took off as fast as my paws could carry me. I was a mouse on a mission to save my tail. I flew up the steps to the Gazette, raced past my office, and headed straight for the conference room. By the time I reached the door, I was sweating like an overweight rat on a treadmill. My paws were aching and my heart was beating so hard I thought it might pop right out of my fur. I flung open the door to the conference room just as the clock chimed 9. I wasn't surprised to see my grandfather waiting for me. Did I mention he's a stickler for punctuality? Here it is, grandfather, I huffed, waving the envelope in the air. Then I collapsed in a heap. Well, grandson, I wasn't sure you had it in you, my grandfather smirked, but it looks like you passed my test with flying colors. You see, Geronimo, the envelope you have contains a copy of the original document. I've had the original here with me the whole time. I just wanted to see how much the Rodent's Gazette meant to you. And now I can see it means a lot. I don't know whether to laugh or cry, but it didn't matter. I had already fainted. A true friend. They took me home on a stretcher. I was exhausted. I slept all day and all night for 24 hours straight. The next day, Double OK came to see me at the office. I told him how silly I felt. I should have admitted that I needed your help, I confessed. But there's one thing I still don't understand. What made you follow me even after I told you I could take care of myself? Cornelius laughed. We secret agents have a sixth sense, Geronimo. He winked. Plus, you always had a knack for getting yourself into trouble when we were little. Remember the time you accidentally flew off that swing at recess? How could I forget? I got stuck in a humongous sticker bush. Ouch! My fur hurt just thinking about it. Before Cornelius left, he gave me a present. It was a special satellite phone to wear around my neck. Now all I had to do was press a button to contact a friend. I told you my Aunt Sweetfur was right. Whoever finds a treasure finds a friend. The end. I hope you enjoyed the book. And remember, if you have AR, you can go take the test.